Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Empyrium, Über, then Sternen, out February 26 on Prophecy Productions. This album has 8 tracks, 53 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. These guys are from Germany. They're a doom folk metal band, and it's been 7 long years since they released an album, so there's a lot of anticipation surrounding this record. Now, the first thing that I want to touch on is the structure of the album. I don't think there is one. There is a track listing, but there's no real solid structure. It's like you're looking at something that it's there, but you can't quite see it. And that's how this album feels in general. This is a record that doesn't offer you a path. It doesn't offer you a sense of time, a sense of progression. You really feel like you're in a vacuum. Everything is dark around you. There's pure darkness. You're there. You're being transported somewhere. You just don't know where you're going, where you are, how much time has elapsed. You're complete voided of most of your senses throughout the experience of listening to this album. And that's why I say that this album doesn't really have a defined structure. It is what it is. It has its own life. It's its own organism, if you will, but it's an organism that doesn't have a spinal cord per se, at least not a visible spinal cord. It has a spinal cord, but it's more of an emotional one that you have to feel, not see it, not touch it. As far as the soundscape is concerned, this is an album that offers a little bit of everything this band has done in the past. Sure, they've evolved, and there's some new elements at play within the overall sound experience of this album. But once you look under the hood and you look at the track listing and you look at the songs individually, how they're constructed, how they sound, how they're put together, you start to see some elements permeating from their previous albums into this record. So it's an album that doesn't reinvent the wheel, at least not from zero, not from scratch, but it does modify its shape ever so slightly. I like this idea. I like this way of approaching it. It allows the fans of the band to kind of feel a little bit at ease as they immerse themselves with the album. So when they're faced with one of those new elements, one of those new ways of putting things together, it's not as foreign to them because they have a lot of things around them that they're already familiar with that gives them a sense of comfort. And that's exactly how the soundscape of this album comes across. Now, this is an album that from an overall perspective and an overall experience, you can't really put it within a genre. There is no genre that can define what it is that this album has in store for the listener. Some tracks definitely have a little bit more of a doom drive. There's a lot of tracks that have this incredible folky sound to them. But to just define this album as that would be a disservice to the overall quality of the record itself. This is an album to be listened to be experienced, not to try to find boundaries in which to fit it in. And that's the best way that you could take this record in and really appreciate every single element that it has to offer. From the soundscape perspective as well, this is a record that doesn't have one element pushing the experience forward. Well, actually, it has one element, but it's not an element that's living within the soundscape itself, is what it represents, and that is the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the common denominator across every single song, and then definitely is the glue that holds this whole record together. Outside of that, you can't say that this is an album that's driven by guitars, drums, or anything else, because this is an album that created an incredible, well-defined experience where you can listen to all the different elements on every single song, each one in its own path, each one in its own lane, and you can break them down individually. But then you can put them all together at the same time and realize how engaging they are when they come together to construct the song that you're currently experiencing. So it gives you a little bit of two sides of the same coin. You get to experience the individuality of the elements and then how they work together in order to create this incredible soundscape, this incredible atmosphere that moves you from song to song and allows you to lose yourself within it. Now, having said all of that, I do have to mention the guitars because I really love that dynamic that the guitar sound has on this record. It's not a driving force, it's an element. But I really like the acoustic sound as much as I like the electronic sound coming out of the guitars. The heaviness, the melody, the darkness, the mood swings that it creates, the atmosphere, the waves, the way it transitions within the songs themselves and then from track to track really create one of the most important layers, but not a defining layer within the overall experience of the sound, but one that definitely measures the overall quality that this album has in store for the listener. Then you get into the vocals. The vocals are very dynamic but subdued and cohesive at the same time. You're gonna get harsh vocals, you're gonna get clean vocals, you're gonna get backing vocals, you're gonna get choirs, you're gonna get everything that this band has done throughout that history mixed in together in one single record. Now, the dynamic elements between the styles and between the changes that happen from song to song and within the songs themselves are important in order to create a feeling of unbalanced, a feeling of movement, a very hidden feeling of movement, but a feeling of movement nevertheless. But they were very well thought out as far as the creation of the songs in order to not make the song about the vocals necessarily or about the style that they were using within the track. The vocals are there to create atmosphere. They're another instrument, and they're an instrument that's being played, perhaps if you want to use a musical terminology, in different keys. So you're using the same instrument, but you're using it in different ways in order to get something else, something different from it. The same one, but you're getting a different result. And that result, every single time as you progress through this album, it doesn't matter if it's clean vocals, harsh vocals, choirs, or backing vocals, the drive is always the same, to create this atmosphere, to create this ambiance, to bring a little bit of emotion into how the track sounds, into how the record sounds, and make it a little bit more palpable, make it a little bit more easier to digest for the listener. But I'll tell you one thing, when you're listening to this record, sometimes you lose track of the vocals within the album. They become so engraved into the DNA, into the soundscape of the record, because they're coming in a little bit deeper in the mix. They're not necessarily in the forefront. They're feeling like they're coming from the back seat into the front seat, with the sound really dictating the overall experience. And the way they merge into the sound of the record allows them to lose themselves within it. So as you're listening to this record, you'll lose track if a song had vocals or not, or what style of vocals was in it, because you're just really concentrating on taking it all in, on taking the experience that the track has to offer, taking in the experience that the album has to offer, and you start to realize that the vocals are not about the message that they have, they're not about the lyrics, but rather how they make you feel and what kind of dynamic ambience they create within the overall atmosphere of this album. This is a record that I really enjoy. It's really outside the box. It's really different. It has a different way of being digested. It has a different way of being perceived. But I feel like this is going to be an album that's going to be a niche kind of record. It's going to appeal to the fans of the band. It's going to appeal to fans that enjoy this more methodic approach, this more atmospheric soundscape approach to music. But it's not going to appeal to those that sit on the periphery, that are not as familiar with the band, that don't really engage themselves in albums that have this sort of big picture. So this is an album that's going to have two camps. I don't think anybody's going to be sitting in the middle, sitting on the fence about it. Either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. I just don't feel like this is a record that makes you feel uninterested or not have an opinion at all. This is definitely an album that it's going to bring some emotions out of the listeners, and it all comes down to where you're coming from, what kind of taste you have, what interest you have in music, and that is going to really dictate on which side of the fence you're going to be on, but definitely not on the fence itself. Now, as far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with the Oaken Throne, really interesting song, a song that has just an incredible soundscape to it. It grows, it evolves, it progresses. That's really how this track feels as you move along with it. It's a song that allows you to lose yourself in it, and that's not just true for this track, it's true for the entire record. You really lose track of time, you lose awareness of your surroundings when you're listening to this album, and this song definitely has those same elements alive and very much in the forefront as far as this track is concerned. But having said that, as you're losing yourself within it, this was a track that found ways of holding you by the hand and bringing you back to where it all started. There's a sense of you digressing, there's a sense of you losing track of where you are, levitating, moving away into empty space. But the song itself is constructed in a way that holds you and pulls you right back to where it all started. So every time you feel like you're getting too far away from it, it brings you right back in, moving you a little bit closer to it. And that's a very interesting approach. A song that's very dynamic, very diverse from a vocal aspect. You get harsh vocals, you get clean vocals, backing vocals, choirs, you get a little bit of everything. But once again, they're there in order to create atmosphere, they're there in order to create and drive the experience of the song, of the sound, and the overall feel that it has built in within it. Next, The Archer, such a stripped down track. This is a track that becomes very cohesive. It doesn't really have a lot of dynamic movements to it. It doesn't change that much as you progress through it. It drives the sound, it drives the experience, it really drives everything. The vocals feel like they're the ones changing the dynamic of the song ever so slightly, because musically it feels a little bit more balanced, but a song that's very somber and very dark on both elements. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the vocals or if you're looking at the musical side of the track. Both of them offer you the same feeling, which is a feeling of somberness, of darkness, that really permeates throughout the whole track. At times you feel like some of that darkness is a little bit hidden, or becomes a little bit hidden by the beauty and the melody that the track holds within itself, and how the vocals impact that melody. So you almost feel like maybe this is not as dark, maybe this song is not as somber as at first glance. No, it is. It's just that the beauty and the melody kind of hides it a little bit. It kind of dulls your senses to it. Last but not least, In the Morning Mist. This is a really interesting track. This is an instrumental track, and it's such a beautiful song. If there's ever a song that you can listen to, have zero vocals in it, and you feel like you're getting the message, you feel like you're listening to somebody talk to you, this song is it. Because it talks to you through the music. And it really proves the point that I feel like it's really present throughout this album. You don't need vocals to tell you what to do. You don't need text, you don't need lyrics to paint a picture or to tell you a message. The music itself can do all of that on its own. This track is the perfect example of that, and this track is also the perfect segue into Über, then Sternen, which is the last track on the album, and I feel like it's the song that breaks the mold ever so slightly. The record is very consistent, is very cohesive up until that point. The last song on the record kind of breaks the mold a little bit, and it goes a little bit outside the box. It starts to become a little bit more focused. Imagine this album being completely out of focus up until that point. The last track, you start to feel like everything is coming in and becoming a little bit more focused, becoming a little bit more crystal clear to you. You perhaps start to understand a little bit of what has happened to you as the listener. Über den Sternen definitely does that as the last track on the album, and this song is the prelude to that track, and it kind of eases you into what becomes the picture coming into full focus. This is it, guys. This is Empyrium with Über den Sternen, out February 26 on Prophecy Productions. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.